Hi, this is Ben Kanute, 70.3 silver medalist at the World Championships, Rio 2016 Olympian, and Island House champion in 2017. And you're listening to the Physical Performance Show.
Failure is not an option.
I've had my ups and my downs.
I think it's an absolutely breakthrough experience.
Welcome to the Physical Performance Show, the show designed to inspire the pursuit of your physical best performance. I'm your host, Brad Beer. Listen in as we delve into how the world's top physical performers achieve their success, as well as the highs, the lows, and the journey of getting there. Let's get ready, set, let's go. Welcome to another episode of the Physical Performance Show podcast, brought to you by POGO Physio and Normatec Recovery. I trust you've been having a great week, and I hope that you've been enjoying pursuing your physical best performance. On today's episode, I caught up with US Olympic triathlete Ben Kanute. Ben shares the highs, the lows, and the learnings of his burgeoning career to date. Ben has been in some sensational form recently, including some breakout performances in 2017. Ben took out the silver medal in the 70.3 World Triathlon Championships in 2017, following in behind Javier Gomez, one of the most iconic triathletes in the sport's history. Ben also went on a roll to then take out the Island House Invitational Triathlon in the beautiful Bahamas in a sprint finish with previous The Physical Performance Show guest Terenzo Bozzone. Ben is a regular face on the World Triathlon Series and also has featured in the Super League Triathlon Series, most recently in Jersey, where I caught up with Ben in person for the first time. On today's episode, Ben takes us through the origins of his sport, the love he has for triathlon, some very granular insights into his training, of course the normal performance round, and Ben lays down the physical challenge for the week. So let's jump straight in with Ben Kanute, US Olympic triathlete. Ben, in terms of aspirational identities as in your youth, were there any athletes, in particular triathletes, that you used to look up to in, these formative teenage years?
I just kind of looked at the series as a whole, and I pulled from the non-draft triathlon as well as draft legal. I can't really remember sticking to just one person, but I remember all of the major players like the Emma Snowsills and Moffats and the Hunter Kemper from the U.S. and Andy Potts and I could go on and keep listing the Javier Gomez, and really it wasn't so much as looking up and seeing them as like huge superstars. Like I wanted to eventually get to doing what they were doing. I wanted to race against them. So I don't think I elevated anybody to a superhero status, but I definitely saw what these guys were doing and used them as role models to kind of shape my own life, to try and use their determination and just how they raced and apply it to my training and everything like that.
Were there any races watching on as a youth, and you were the 2008 and 2010 USA junior elite national champ, so you quickly rose to improve that run leg and assert your dominance in the US scene. But were there any standout races? I can recall watching races as a junior that some just stick with me, but have there been any races you have watched through your development that stand out, whether it's an Olympic race or an Ironman title?
Yeah, in the US, sometimes it's hard to get to those races, and I was lucky enough to travel around and race on the world stage as a junior to see some of those races. So I'd say some of those times as a junior in that 2008 or 9 through 2011, those were great races to watch. But I was lucky enough. I got to watch High V a few years, especially in like 2007, 2008. Those were some really, really exciting races. And I think I got to be more up close than I would at any other race. And there was more interaction between pros and kind of junior youths, or some more autograph signing than I was maybe able to get to at the World Championships.
So that was very motivating and inspiring, being around the elites of the sport. As you say, you realise you wanted to compete with some of these athletes. You didn't just want to put them on a pedestal.
Right. Yeah. No, it was super inspiring, just seeing the speed that they were going at and how they carried themselves and all of that. It was cool to get that exposure, especially on U.S. soil.
Ben, what's something that you're learning at the moment? What are you learning?
I'd say, I feel like every single year I've got to relearn patience a little bit. It seems like in this January, February time, you're mostly fit, you're getting close to races. You want to see those numbers coming up, but it's always having the patience and having patience to keep the build going throughout the whole season, or patience to just know that the training and the numbers will come along, and to not try and get ahead of myself too much.
And has there been, occasions where patience, you just haven't displayed it and it's cost you results?
There have been decisions that I've made in racing where I've gotten impatient, and that was kind of my MO for a long time. And I'd say some people might still argue that I get a little bit too excited on the swim and the bike and take off early and burn a few too many matches and find myself struggling on the run. But I've been lucky enough in training at least to have some good mentors, some good coaches, a good team around me to kind of keep my head on right and not go out there and do too much too early.
And how do you train patience practically? Is it just you've just got to learn from your mistakes as you go and try and reiterate for the next race and not burn the matches too soon?
Yeah, I think in racing, I think it's something that definitely can be learned pretty well through mistakes. It's I can recall multiple races, I guess, where just going off the front hurt me, or I wasn't patient enough, or that first 400 meters of the run was way too quick. And the most important thing though is to recognize that you're not being patient or you're doing something wrong, and then you can learn from it. And I guess you try and learn from anybody else who's been in the same position as you, and really try and take their advice to prevent any mistakes.
Can you give an example of your biggest blow up to date?
Biggest blow up. Let's see. I've had quite a few, but I would say there's got to be one. I think in my junior days, I was probably a little bit more crazy than usual. So, when I raced on the Gold Coast in Australia, I remember being at the front for most of the race and practically walking that run there. Let's see. I would say, I'd say that's probably one of the first ones that comes to mind, because I just remember a picture there of me looking miserable, trying to death march it on home. But there have been a few.
Well, Ben, it's funny you mentioned Gold Coast, and for listeners, we're referring to the World Triathlon Series, the sprint distance event that was held on the Gold Coast last year in 2017. And Ben, I was on the side of the course that day, and I was watching yourself and Ryan Fisher go for it, previous guest of the podcast, and I am like, go boys, come on. That's what I like to see. Personally, I love seeing go off the front and potentially jeopardise their podium chance just to stir the pot and make people chase. So I'm a big fan of that racing.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and I like to race that way too. And I've come to kind of develop my own strategy, I guess, and it's just learning like when to take the chance and if I have time to recover, and knowing kind of when to play your cards and when they're going to help you more than hurting everybody else. So, so it's been a work in progress, and I believe in racing to your strengths as well. So I have to kind of find that balance too, of being able to push the swim and the bike, and, maybe sacrificing a couple percentages on my run, but getting that back a lot more on the swim and the bike to set myself up for that.
And Ben, I mean, talking about setting yourself up, let's go to what in my mind, is arguably your greatest performance to date, and that was picking up the silver medal in the World 70.3 Triathlon Champs in 2017 in Chattanooga. And I mean, you took it to an elite field, and some of one of your idols, you didn't use the word idol, but one of your triathlon junior heroes, you mentioned Javier Gomez. You went off the front and laid it all down, and I know Javier had to chase hard to pick you for the win, to pip you for the win, I should say, in the Chattanooga race. So how did that race play out for you, and what was going through your head as you crossed to pick up the silver in the World Champs in 2017?
Yeah, it's funny to hear other people describe that race, because they all look at it like I was taking a huge chance going off the front, or blowing my legs up before the run. And my coach Jim Vance and I just kind of sat down, and we had a lot of expectations for the race. I guess we just laid out a plan, and we knew I could push the swim, and we picked kind of that to the top of the hill, which was about 10 miles tops on the bike. And that was kind of my checkpoint, where I capped myself at a wattage. And at the top of there, I was going to take a look and see if I'm with people, maybe I'll sit back and let them set the pace. If I'm with one other guy, maybe just let's pick up the pace and let's try and go for it together, work together a bit. And if I was by myself, it was kind of just sitting into that pre-planned wattage that I knew I could hit for the entire ride, and just kind of, I guess, hoping that it was only one person who caught me, or maybe the group got tied up. And I like to think that it was a bit of fitness and then a lot of luck too that kind of played into that, with a lot of those guys looking at each other. Following it up with a run, I knew I could run in that 114 to 116 range, and just barely got into that range, I think, with my run, and maybe being solo on the bike played a bit into that. But it was really just an incredible race. And I don't like to say that it was the perfect race, because there's a few things maybe I would have liked to tweak or do better, but it was pretty darn close. And to be able to do that and grab the silver medal at the World Championships was amazing. And to do it on U.S. soil was even more incredible. And there were some people taking pictures on the line, and I've posted a few of them, and I think that they do a pretty good job at describing how I was feeling, because it was almost a little bit of disbelief, because I figured I could go maybe top 10 and top 5 on a good day, and if I had just an outstanding day, maybe the podium would be in reach. So that was just an awesome race.
And that image, it's on your Instagram gallery, Ben. So listeners, jump over and follow Ben on Instagram. But that image with you coming down the finishing chute, hands on your head, looking just in disbelief, I think that's such a poignant image that really did a fantastic job of capturing the emotion. Yeah,
for sure. Because I knew Gomez was going to be a hard person to beat across the line, but that. I was even worried about all those other guys who were charging as well. They were definitely primed for a quick run, and you never count somebody like Tim Don out of the race, or Sam Appleton, or any of those guys who were running up behind me.
And I mean, what went through your head when Javier did run past in those closing miles of the run? What were you thinking?
Yeah, I was finally starting to feel more like myself at that point. And I was not really surprised that he was going to charge past me. I was a little bit more surprised that he took a second or two to kind of pull up next to me or slightly behind me before he went. But it's pretty obvious, like, Javi's a way better runner than I am. So it was mainly just trying to stick to my pace. I had a full another lap to go, and I wasn't going to risk a silver medal or a podium by, trying to run with Javi for 800 or 1600 meters. So I just kept my rhythm, kept everything going and relaxed, and just kept trying to tick off those mile markers to get to the finish line.
You mentioned there a moment ago, Ben, the term a perfect race, and that was not what you'd say a perfect race, but it was maybe the closest you've had to it. What would a perfect race look like for Ben Kanute?
Well, I think a perfect race ends up with a victory next to your name. But I mean, really, I could go and I could talk about the 70.3 World Championships, because there are a lot of aspects to that race that I would have in the perfect race. And I guess one of the things I would change from it is being on top of the podium. But I was calm and focused the entire race. I had a good time. Like I followed my game plan. I didn't really let myself get like too down during the race. I had rough spots, but I worked my way through them. And like I didn't set any overly ambitious expectations that I had to do, any overly ambitious outcome goals. It was all process goal oriented, and making sure my form was right, hitting certain checkpoints, being possibly in like a certain wattage range, and just getting comfortable and, really just executing each part of the race and not getting too far ahead of myself.
Ben, you mentioned your wattage output for the triathlon fans listening in. What was your sort of normalised watts or power output for the bike, and what was your running pace for the end of it?
Yeah, and I should hand you, there's a Training Peaks article, I believe, that went through, and it gave a little bit better of an in-depth analysis than I can do from my coach about like what my actual power was and everything. But going in, I knew that I could hold somewhere between like 340 and 360 watts for that ride. And I believe I was either on the lower half of that or right smack dab in the middle. I was 340 something, I think. And for the run, I was somewhere in the 116 range, which I think is like a 540-ish mile. I could be a little off on those, but that's kind of what I had planned going into the race, and just so happened to kind of do it. And I mean, it wasn't a completely steady effort through the whole time. Like I said, the bike at the first half, I capped myself for the climb at 400 watts. And on the run, it was a pretty significantly hilly course, so there's quite a variation in pace going on throughout that as well.
A good, honest run course, which is nice to see. Ben, confidence obviously soared after that breakout World Championship silver medal. What did it do for your confidence in the racing that followed for the remainder of 2017?
It kind of gave me a foundation to work off of. I knew that I had good fitness. I knew that my training was better than it ever had been. And I had a result or two that was solid and good in the beginning of the year. But that was really the first kind of, I guess you could say, stamp of approval or that I had for the entire year. And I just tried to take each race then and kind of mimic my approach and make sure that I went through the process for each thing. And yeah, it was a good way to start my championship season, because I mean, you could have ended my year right there and that would have been an outstanding year. And I would have been so happy to do it. And then to kind of have a few more good races toward the end of the year was even better.
And I mean, talking about good races, while we're talking performances, Ben, from there you went to Rotterdam WTS, World Triathlon Series Grand Final, a week later, I believe. But then one of the things that sticks out in my mind for the back end of your year is that terrific dual tussle you had with previous podcast guest here on the Physical Performance Show, Terenzo Bozzone, in the Island House Invitational Triathlon. So put listeners in perspective with what happened there and what that win meant to you. It was a terrific sprint finish, which listeners, we will tag up in the show notes along with Ben's reference to his Training Peaks article about his World Champ medals. But what was the Island House like for you?
Oh, it was an incredible race. I wasn't quite sure what to expect going into that race. I'd never been on the island before. It was my first time out there, and the training beforehand was I guess being kind of blunt, it was a little rough. I was pretty tired coming out of the race block. I did half Ironman Worlds. Like you said, I went to the grand final. Then I was in Jersey for Super League. And then I think it was 2 weeks later, I did the Sarasota World Cup. And then after that, it was trying to recover a bit and then get back into training so I could get back up for Island House. So I remember that first day of the time trial, just having no idea where I would stack up against some of these guys, because you had some of the best Ironman athletes, some of the guys who I race all the time at the ITU circuit who I knew were going to be very good. And that entire time trial on the first day, I was kind of just putting my head down, just going a little bit like, oh, I'm not sure if this is the effort I need right now. This feels like really, really hard. And it ended up being good enough to put me on top of the leaderboard for the day. And from then on, that gave me the confidence too, and the confirmation that what I was doing and training beforehand and just trusting in it and not paying too much attention to specific numbers and just getting in the work, that was all worth it. And I just needed to trust in that for the second two stages. And I somehow ended up able to pull off that sprint. And I thought it was a touch too early and thought Terenzo had me there, but somehow I found another gear.
Well, it was absolutely terrific. And I mean, I was just loving the fact that here's Terenzo, who I watched in the, on the island at Hamilton Island in the first Super League Triathlon Series events in 2017. Find that short course racing somewhat of a challenge. Mind you, it was draft legal, but obviously to see the Island House performance with you two going to the line, I thought that's just such a terrific thing for the sport. So well done. Simply sensational. And then also the Super League. How was your Super League experience? That's where we caught up, Ben. I actually caught up with you on the physio table, where at that point you were suffering from recollection, a bit of a thoracic spine, potentially disky sort of thing you were trying to manage that weekend into your next race. So, how did that weekend play out for you in Jersey?
Yeah, that was, I guess, close to being my breaking point a little. I did have a little bit of a back issue flare up. And I mean, that was still just another great experience. I love these super sprint, all out, high intensity races, especially ones that go over multiple days. It was awesome. I think I was probably a little bit tired from my two previous weekends of racing, but still, it was a great experience. Another very cool place that I got to go to in Jersey. And I think too, the races like Super League and Island House, you get a really good group of people who are at a race that's unique, and everybody's there to really put forth a good effort. But it's also a little bit more of a relaxed atmosphere too. Everybody's hanging out, and you are all staying at the same place, kind of having meals at the same time. So there's a good camaraderie in between racing, and then some pretty fierce competition.
Absolutely. And we will tag up the Jersey YouTube highlights in the show notes. You're listening to Ben Kanute, US Olympic triathlon representative and Island House Invitational Triathlon champion, sharing on the highs, the lows, and the learnings of his career to date. Support for today's show comes from Normatec Recovery. Normatec is the leader in rapid recovery systems designed to give a competitive edge to the world's elite endurance athletes. The Normatec Pulse recovery systems are dynamic compression devices designed for recovery and rehab, using its patented pulse technology to help athletes recover faster between workouts and after performance by reducing muscle soreness and improving circulation. Get fresh legs faster with Normatec. If you'd like to check out the Normatec recovery range, then jump over to alphasport.com and use the promo code POGO, POGO capitals, to receive 5% off all Normatec products. Support for today's episode comes, as always, lovingly from POGO Physio. We exist to help you get back to your physical best following injury. We want everyone who walks through the doors of POGO Physio to cross their physio finish line. That's where we high-five you, tell you that you finished rehabilitation, and celebrate the fact that you're back to your physical best. We do this through session-to-session care, as well as some industry-first models of care, including our unique 2, 6, and 12-week fixed-fee, unlimited access finish line programs, which include unlimited hands-on therapies and exercise rehabilitation, including clinical Pilates and use of state-of-the-art equipment such as the Alter G anti-gravity treadmill. In addition to finish line programs and session-to-session care, clients of POGO also benefit from our monthly Wellness Booster packages, which include remedial massage, physiotherapy, clinical Pilates, and also access to our state-of-the-art technologies, all from a low $195 per month. To find out more, jump over to pogophysio.com.au and schedule your Discover Recover initial appointment. Ben, you studied psychology, I believe, at university. Is that right?
If that's on the USOC or one of my profiles, I think somebody misheard me, and it's I studied physiology. Actually,
what? I had read that as well, and I thought psychology, physiology, but there's a big difference. Well, we won't go down the psychology route other than to ask you. You mentioned describing Chattanooga that you got yourself through the tough spots.
Yeah.
How do you, Ben Kanute, get yourself through the tough spots in racing, be it short course format or long course racing or the Olympics?
Right. Yeah. This is something that I've had to work pretty hard at too, because I can kind of get ahead of myself or focus on something that happened, whether it just happened or happened a few times, like hours before, days before. And I've worked with a sports psychologist now for at least a couple years, since pre-Rio. And one of the things we worked really hard on too is just kind of staying in the now moment and making sure, like, what am I doing right now? And he likes to call it a dashboard. I call it a checklist, but just kind of going over and going through all of the things that you can change right there. Like, how is your form going? How's your rhythm? How's your breathing? Just paying attention to what your body's telling you and kind of objectively going through it and just moving past it to, like, if you're in a rough spot, focus on something that you can get through. And my coach in one of my sessions actually told me on a day that we were doing a big half Ironman prep workout, and I was starting to struggle a bit, kind of starting to fall apart a little too, and was starting to get a little frustrated. And he said, like, just take what your body's giving you that day. And that kind of clicked for me. And I was like, that's all I can really expect from myself, is just take what my body's giving and try and work through that. And I ended up in that workout working through that rough spot and going on past it. And that's kind of what I did in Chattanooga as well. In miles like 2 through 4 or something, I was in kind of a rough spot and trying to work through like a side stitch or something. And that's kind of just what I kept telling myself and trying to find my rhythm and find a way to get back to kind of where I was before that.
Yeah, and I think it's fascinating. I love that from your coach, Jim. Take what your body's given you that day. I mean, I don't think you're the sort of athlete that would have ever crossed a finish line that hadn't emptied the tank, no matter what your body gave you that day. You seem to leave it all on the line. And certainly whatever you've been doing, with your dashboard or your checklist has been working for you, Ben. So keep doing it. But you mentioned your coach there, Jim. How important is your coach to your performances, Ben?
For me, I think it's really important. And I've had I've been really lucky to have a few really great coaches throughout my career. And I only started working with Jim about a year and a half ago, like late 2016, in October or November, somewhere in there. And, he's somebody who I think is very knowledgeable about the sport. And I've known him for quite a long time, even before I was working with him as a coach. So it's important to have that trust between a coach and an athlete. And I buy into his training theories, and I believe that he knows kind of how my body responds. He's seen me race. He knows how I race. And I don't have to start from square one with him when I started working with him. And I like that he's very data oriented and can lay out kind of what I need to see to have the confidence to go out and perform at a certain level. And at the same time, he can be pretty blunt too. He knows kind of how to tread the line between saying, you just have to go out and do this workout. This is one of those you just have to get through, even if you're tired, while also balancing rest a good deal too. And that's been, I think, pretty key for me is last year, which was the first full season we worked together. We spent a lot of time making sure I was rested for each race and letting myself be fully prepared for each race and not really being tired at all for the start.
And it's just that all important ingredient, isn't it? The rest component. Ben, describe the darkest day in your athletic career to date.
Yeah, I think that I'd have to go with the Rio test event. It was a year before the games, and that Rio course set up really, really well for me. And I think a lot of people thought that I had the chance to either perform really well or automatically qualify or at least put up something good there. But with the way I was training, or something just happened, or it was built up too much pressure just right from when the gun went off. I was having a bad day, went backwards in the swim, which doesn't usually happen to me, and hardly made it up the first hill of the bike. And I remember thinking about just stopping right there, but eventually made it through the race. But it was one of those where I was just kind of jogging on the way home of that home stretch. And that was definitely one that was really, really hard. And a lot of it was because at the time I couldn't figure out what happened and why it was so bad. So that's probably one of the hardest parts of my career so far.
And certainly your selection into your debut Olympic team for the Rio Olympic Games in 2016, it was a tough one. You didn't just waltz into that team. Even, obviously you've just described that race that the test event didn't go how you wanted, but getting into the team was quite an achievement in of itself.
Yeah, thank you. I think that probably my proudest moment, or the proudest thing about my whole Olympic journey, was actually the qualification in Yokohama and doing it on a runner's course, when I think most people wouldn't really consider me a runner at all, and doing it kind of in a different way than everybody thought that I would, and surprising a lot of people, I think.
Yeah, and mate, fast forward, Ben, to Rio. You're on the start line, 24, I believe, years of age, on the start line at Rio. Selected in the US team through quite a rigorous process. What's going through your head on the start line at the Olympic Games 2016 triathlon? I
just wanted to go out there and, have a good, solid race. Kind of hit those processes, put myself in a position to do well. One of my main goals was just to have a better performance and a better showing than I did in the test event that year before. Yeah, I went out there and I wanted to make that front pack and hang with those guys and just see what would happen. And I tried to treat it like any other race, any other WTS race. And USA Triathlon did a fantastic job at helping give us the environment to do that. And I was able to kind of pretend a bit that it was, just a normal race, but there's still kind of that underlying feeling that this is something that's pretty special and really cool. And I kind of made sure to take that all in and enjoy the fact that I was able to represent my country on one of the biggest sporting stages in the world.
If not the biggest, it's the Olympics. And you were in the front pack, the Brownlees, Jonathan Alistair, all pushing the pace. You must have been, pinch yourself moment as you're in that front pack racing around that tough and tight circuit in Rio.
Yeah, for sure. It was definitely, I think, a special moment. But at the time, I don't know how much I was thinking about that. I was mostly thinking about not losing the wheel in front of me, because I just remember how hard that bike was. Yes. The whole time. They were just drilling everything, and there was no resting even around corners or it was just super full on.
Yeah, and it looked like that, Ben, watching the broadcast from Australia. Ben, let's do a performance round. And that is some rapid fire questions. So are you ready for it? This is your session for the day.
All right, let's give it a shot.
What's the training session that you most dislike?
I think it's an easy swim.
An easy swim, because you're normally going hard, right?
Well, yeah, especially like an easy, longer swim, because it just seems to take so much longer than if you have a set and you just get to it.
Get it knocked out. Training session you most love, Ben Kanute?
I think a long bike ride, endurance ride.
We're talking how many hours?
I kind of like that 4-hour ride, especially a group ride. There's always in Tucson, where I spent a lot of years training, there was a ride called the Shootout, and it was kind of like a weekend race almost. You got to a bunch of buddies and people from out of town, in town, would all come out and ride, and you could have 50 to 150 people out there riding. And three-ish hours was probably the ride, and then add on a little bit to a coffee shop at the end.
The compulsory fuel station at the end. I love how groups give these rides names. I think it's a universal thing to do.
Oh yeah, I think so too. It makes it famous then.
Exactly, it's an identity. Favorite pre-race meal, Ben? What fuels you on race day and the night before?
So the day of the race is probably a little strange. I have a mixture, like a cup or so of applesauce. There's some toast with just some honey on there, and a banana, and then some sports drink. Just kind of started doing that last year as something super simple to sit in the stomach. And then before the race, I'm not a super picky eater, but I try and keep it really simple and do something like chicken and rice, and not really big on the veggies right before the race, depending on when it is the next day. But kind of that 24 hours before the race is keeping stuff pretty simple. Just get it in the system, get your energy, and then get it out.
What's your morning rise time, bedtime like? Have you got a pretty strict sleep hygiene pattern you follow, Ben, or are you a bit more casual?
I'm a little bit more casual in the fact that I don't necessarily care as much when I go to sleep, as long as I'm getting at least 8 hours. But if I had to pick kind of a time zone I went to sleep, is usually around that 10 o'clock or so period is kind of my go-to time, but I can go either way. And then wake up is mostly whenever I have what I have scheduled for the day. If it's an early morning session, I wake up early and go do that. And if not, I let myself sleep in as long as I can and wake up naturally.
Who's the athlete, Ben, you most admire, and why?
That's a super hard one. I know this is rapid fire, but it's hard to not name him. Javier Gomez is somebody that it's hard not to name if I was going to pick a triathlete, just because of his long period of dominance and how he is pretty meticulous and dedicated in everything that he does. But if I were to pick someone outside the sport, I've always liked Muhammad Ali. I liked the confidence that he had. I guess I like to use the word swagger that he had there. And he was just an all around like great athlete, but also a performer outside the sport, and knew how to create drama in an exciting boxing match.
Who's the toughest competitor you've ever raced, Ben, and why?
I'd have to go up there. I mean, I can pick so many different people. We can narrow it down to ITU and probably the Brownlee brothers and someone like Alistair, just because he will literally kill himself before he loses a race. Like, he's come so close to that point. He just keeps going until he breaks. So, and he doesn't break very often. So I'd say he's probably one of the toughest competitors.
What's your best recovery tip, Ben?
I like to roll a lot. Make sure you do that. And I'm big on seeing a PT or a massage therapist. I try and get in as much as my schedule allows, but I think prehab or preventative therapy is really good, whether you do it on your own and sit in Normatec boots or roll or whatever it is, but to do that sort of thing. And then I'd say a good little recovery shake, get in some calories like right after a workout.
Is there a mantra, Ben, that you use when you're racing or you're competing? Some self-talk?
I've tried having a specific one before, but I don't usually have a specific phrase that I go to. It's more running through that checklist, making sure like what's going on right now in the moment. Like, what can I do right now to get myself going faster, or whatever the objective is. So it's more of a focus, I would say, than a specific phrase or anything.
What's the worst injury to date you've had to overcome?
Luckily, I've got some wood to knock on. No real major injuries, probably just a bike crash. And like a minor broken bone or something like that, but nothing that's kept me out of sport, really.
Well, let's keep that going, Ben. One word to describe your racing style. What is it and why?
Aggressive, I would say. Going off the front kind of right from the beginning, and you can't really win the race on the swimming bike is what a lot of people and what I'd like to say, but you can make people lose it on those two legs before the run.
Yeah, that's powerful. Ben, how would you describe being in the zone?
Well, my sports psych, or I guess a lot of people call it like the flow state. And I like that word is because it feels like you're in the flow. You're just, when you're in the zone, everything is coming easily to you. And I've always, I feel like I'm a little bit of a connoisseur of pain, being an endurance athlete. There's different types of pain, whether you're sprinting or going long or swimming, biking, running, whatever. But there's also like a good pain and a bad pain. The good pain is when everything is kind of clicking and you're rolling through, and you kind of you get like a sick satisfaction out of it. And that bad pain is when you're kind of negative about it, and it just seems like time is getting made even longer. So I think that in the zone is that good pain where it feels like everything is clicking and you're just kind of enjoying it and getting into it.
I love that connoisseur of pain. When was the last time you were in the zone?
I can't think. Maybe I think there's a workout that I had like in last week, probably early last week. I think that I was doing that. And in a race, that one's easy, and that's Island House.
Yeah, for sure. Ben, 2 questions left in the performance round. What's the hardest session you have ever done in training?
I believe, and I've blacked it out a little bit, so I don't remember if I did 3 by 30 minutes or 4. I'm pretty sure it was 4 by 30 minutes on the bike, and it was a prep for half Ironman Worlds, and then we did a few miles of half Ironman pace off of that bike, and that one was maybe not the hardest effort wise of putting it out, but it was the hardest to mentally stay in it, because I also did it around Fiesta Island, which for 30 minutes it's like 3.5 laps or so. So I did a lot of laps around Fiesta Island for that workout.
Where's Fiesta Island, Ben, for the uninitiated?
Yeah, sorry, it's in San Diego, and Fiesta Island. It's just a small little loop on this kind of little dingy island that not too many cars go on at the right times in the morning. So it's a good place in a relatively big or crowded city to just kind of put your head down and be able to do some efforts out there without having to stop at stoplights or anything.
Yeah, I got it. Last question in the performance round. What's the funniest thing you've ever seen, either out training or racing? Bit of a lighthearted one.
Yeah. Let's see. That's a hard one to answer, I guess. Well, here's something that we used to do when we were out riding in Tucson, which is a town in Arizona for anybody who doesn't know. And I lived there for a number of years to train, and me and my roommate go out riding, and there's one highway out there where it seems like everybody likes to throw stuff out the window of their car. So we always used to play like we called it Ajo Bingo, because it was it was Ajo Highway out of Tucson that we used to play, and we saw all sorts of stuff from people's clothes to different toys you can name pretty much a random object out in your house or something. You could see it on the side of the road where you kind of just turn your head and you're going like, what is that doing out here, like in the middle of the desert?
You're listening to Ben Kanute, US Olympic triathlon representative and also silver medalist from the 2017 70.3 World Triathlon Championships, share around the highs, lows and learnings of his career to date. If you missed last week's episode featuring Ben St. Lawrence, then be sure to jump back over and tune in. This has been a very popular episode featuring well inside the iTunes Health and Fitness Top 10 for Health and Fitness episodes. Here's a little snippet of my time with Ben St. Lawrence, dual Australian Olympic representative and 10,000 metre record holder.
We would do sometimes wind sprints, so 100 metres hard, 100 metres float for up to 5K. Then there's things like monofartlek, there's, quarters, there's 700 hard, 300 float. You can really do it any way you like, and the key for me is that the recovery should be a float and not backing it off too much, so you're really just coming back down and barely getting your heart rate down before you go again.
To tune into the full episode of Ben St. Lawrence and explore the archives of the Physical Performance Show, be sure to jump over to pogophysio.com.au or explore the archives from within your favourite podcast player. Now, let's jump back to Ben Kanute. Strength training, does that play a big role in your week-to-week training life?
It does, but it's a very kind of light strength training. It's mostly body weight focused. And my philosophy on strength training is that it shouldn't take away from any of my swim, bike, or run training. So I usually keep it to maybe like twice a week, 3 times if it's kind of a lighter week or I can fit it in. And it doesn't take me more than like 45-ish minutes. And a lot of it's based on core too, and kind of balance and working on maybe any imbalances that I have.
Have you got a favorite exercise out of that routine that you do, Ben?
I've been a pretty big fan of planks on a medicine ball lately, like feet on the floor, elbows and forearms up on the med ball or whatever the big roundy, like bouncy one is. So maybe it's not a med ball. But yeah, like making circles or spelling out your name or something like that on one of those.
Big fan at the moment. Nutrition, Ben, obviously shifting from the shorter course racing to 70.3s. Any nutrition tips that you'd share with listeners? Yeah, for day-to-day life, I'd say strike a balance. You don't have to be 100% perfect in your diet. Like I like to enjoy a dessert. I like to have a beer every so often. And, I like to have sandwiches. I like to have some white bread too. So none of that stuff is like inherently bad, but I also balance it out with a ton of veggies and some good lean protein. And then as far as training wise, I'm usually taking in some sort of sports drink. It's varied over the past few years for what I use, but I mainly try and find a good ratio of sodium content and carbohydrates in there. And yeah, other than that, I just kind of keep myself fueled on the bike and never really, especially for those long rides, which is, I guess, why I'm speaking about the bike. You don't do too many long runs, but yeah, it's just kind of keeping the body fueled and topped off so you're not digging too deep into the hole. Brilliant. Thanks for sharing, Ben. What's on your bucket list inside sport and outside of sport, Ben? Young in years, very tender in years you are. 26, I think you are at the moment. Yeah, bucket list. I guess I have like those reach goals, kind of ones that are way up there. Like I'd love to win a medal at the Olympic Games. I'd love to, go race Kona someday too and win a medal there. I'd like to move up one spot on the half Ironman podium. But as far as some bucket list races too, I just got to visit Iceland over Christmas, and that Challenge Iceland race looks awesome. As well as doing some of the classics too. I haven't done the New York City Tri or Noosa or some races like that have been around for a long time. And, some of the legends of the sport went through and did those races, and Wildflower is another one. I'd like to kind of check off some of those lists, some of those types of races as well. And then for outside, I would like to just travel a bunch too. I mean, I get to travel a lot of cool places doing the sport, but
I don't always get to be a tourist or do all the stuff that I want to do while I'm there. So there are some places I'd like to go back to and visit. And then also just, I think hitting up some of the other cool places that I maybe have to skip over as I'm traveling for races and training.
No, brilliant. Ben, if you could boil everything you've learnt to date, the highs, the lows, the learnings of your athletic career to date, down to one solitary piece of advice, what would it be for listeners in terms of what they need to do to perform at their physical best? One piece of advice from Ben Kanute.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest and best pieces of advice I ever got was that there's always a bigger race. There's always a next race. So, and for me, that was really hard to come to terms with, because as a junior, it felt like the junior national championships was the biggest race, or the junior world championships. And then it was whatever U23s. And then it was the continental cups and world cups and WTS and then Olympic and all up towards that. But, you think back to those junior races, nobody really cares who won those. Or triathlon, like especially triathlon, has a pretty short memory. So like you're never really defined by that one performance that you have. And I mean, to be honest, you shouldn't be only defined by sport in just that aspect. You should be also looked at as a good person as well. So yeah, I think that there's always another race, and never just define yourself on that one race.
Ben, if you could have dinner, fun question, with 3 people, living or past, who's at your dinner table and why?
Oh man, these questions always get me. There's so many choices. I'll pick, let's see, Muhammad Ali. Got to go with that. Jerry Seinfeld, and I'm gonna have a hard time just filling out the third person. Let's see. Well, I'll go back to why. So Muhammad Ali, because I love his sporting career. I think it'd be super interesting to listen to him talk. Jerry Seinfeld, just because the show Seinfeld is pretty great. I do love to watch that every so often, and currently just watching the Netflix, the Cars, or the comedians in Cars getting coffee, and seems like a pretty fun guy to hang out with. And let's see, I'll just throw in a Stephen Colbert. I always thought that he was I liked watching his show, and he seems like he would be someone interesting too. And they're all people who I think wouldn't really need much prompting to talk. So that'd be good. They all seem like they have some good stories.
Brilliant. Ben, let's issue a physical challenge. So every guest of the show gets to issue listeners, Ben, with a physical challenge for the week. What's Ben Kanute's physical challenge to listeners for this week going to be?
I think that from what I hear, a lot of the runners from my sport have been issuing swim challenges. So I feel like I need to issue a run challenge. So I would say, let's go for a consistency, because consistency is always good. And let's go for four out of the 7 days, maybe just a short run. I'm not sure what everybody's specific goals are, but I think it's fair to put it around 20 minutes or 30 minutes of just a jog, just for a consistency's sake. Doesn't really get too much better than that, I think, consistency wise.
Absolutely. And if you take this challenge on from Ben listeners, be sure to jump over and tag Ben in on social media. Ben, where can we follow you and find out more about you if we want to follow your journey?
Right. Everything is pretty easy to follow me at, on Instagram and Twitter. I think it's just at Ben Kanute. My website is benkanute.com. And my Facebook page is, I believe, Professional Triathlete Ben Kanute, or you could reverse those words and that might work better. So all pretty easy to remember. And
we'll tag that up in the show notes, listeners. Ben, you've got a great team of sponsors, supporters around you. Anyone you want to give a shout out to?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I just joined the Bahrain 13 endurance team for this year, so pretty excited about that. And can't forget my sponsors like Trek, Tier, and Hoka, who have all been with me for a number of years and supplied me with some of the best equipment. I love all of their stuff. And working with Stride now, the running power meter, and that's just kind of the tip of the iceberg right there. And I encourage anybody who wants to find some quality gear to head over to my sponsorship page and check that out.
Absolutely. Ben, lastly, every guest gets to tag someone that they think would be interesting to be featured on the Physical Performance Show. Who does Ben Kanute want to tag to appear on the show?
Let's see. I don't know. I would nominate someone like a Sebastian Kienle, because he's not only an awesome racer, but he's just a great personality too. So
Ben Kanute, absolute gentleman. I think you're a super talent in the sport, Ben, and I am a big fan of the aggressive style of racing that you lay down. So I'll certainly be keeping a keen eye on your results through the start and the remainder of 2018, the calendar year that we're currently in, and certainly be keen to see you go around at Super League through the year, hopefully, and beyond. So all the best, mate.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me on. I loved it.
So there you have it, another episode of the Physical Performance Show. I trust you enjoyed today's episode featuring Ben Kanute. If you did, then please let both Ben and myself know. You'll find our social media handles over at pogophysio.com.au along with a copy of the show notes. If today was your first time tuning in to the Physical Performance Show, then a mighty welcome. If it was your 98th time tuning in, then a massive thank you for your return, visit, and also your ongoing support. If you've enjoyed today's episode and know someone who could benefit from the episode and the sharings of Ben Kanute, then please consider tagging them in on social media or sharing the episode with them. Don't forget also to hit subscribe from within your favourite podcast player in order to get each and every episode updated live each week. Lastly, if you've been enjoying the Physical Performance Show, then please consider leaving a review over on iTunes. Reviews help this podcast get into the ears of more people who, just like you, are looking to perform and pursue at their physical best. The good news is reviews are simple. You can now do them over on your smartphone and, of course, your laptop or PC computer. Thanks very much for those who have left a review, including this week's review that has come through from Val, the running doctor. Val rated the Physical Performance Show 5 stars and commented, "One of my favourite podcasts. I have listened to all of them so far. The array of high-performing athletes and coaches, their live insights and their struggles are wonderful to hear, as we mortal runners can relate at times. Love the experts podcasts as very useful information about how to prevent and manage injuries, but also a lot of misconceptions about them well clarified. And not only local heroes, but also world performers. 20 out of 10, Brad. Thanks for all your hard work and putting together these for us all to enjoy. They are a treat. Keep it up in 2018. Val, thank you very much. And if you're listening in, guys, Val has some great posts herself over on the Running Dr. 6 on Instagram. So well worth giving Val a follow and some love. If you have any feedback on how the Physical Performance Show can be improved, then I'd love to hear from you. You're most welcome to email me, b.beer, B-W-E-R, at pogophysio, all one word, lowercase.com.au. If you've got any feedback, be it good or otherwise, then I would love to receive that. We are looking to make the show better each and every week, so your feedback is invaluable in that process. A big thanks, as always, to the team who make the Physical Performance Show possible. That's Susan Wilkin on all things show administration, Matthew Walding on all things graphic design, and Daryl Misson, our amazing audio engineer, on all things audio. Of course, another big thank you to the show's supporters, Normatec Recovery and Pogo Physio, who make this show possible. Podcasts are free to download, however, they are not free to produce. Thank you, guys. Finally, if you are a regular podcast listener, you may have heard of a podsy. It is a new word. I heard it recently myself, and that we are going to have a competition around the Physical Performance Show's first podsies. What's a podsie? It's simple. It is a screenshot of your phone as you listen to the Physical Performance Show. Now, we're going to do a little competition. If you take a podsie and share it on your social media channel and tag myself in at Brad_beer, then you will go into the draw each week to win a copy of the Amazon running and jogging bestseller, You Can Run Pain Free. So podsie away, guys, and tag me in for your chance to win. If you are into running, and I suspect listening today, then you probably are either a triathlete or a runner or an endurance athlete or just a fitness enthusiast, then you can pick up your copy of my running and jogging bestseller, You Can Run Pain Free, over on Audible or iBooks. You Can Run Pain Free is available, of course, in the Kindle versions and also the faithful, trusty paperback versions via Amazon internationally, also domestically in Australia, or pogophysio.com.au. If you are purchasing through the Pogo Physio page, then be sure to use the promo code POD 2018 to receive 50% off the $24.95 recommended retail price. Coming up in next week's episode of the Physical Performance Show, I caught up with 11 times, that's right, 11 times World Muay Thai Kickboxing Champion, Nathan Carnage Corbett. So we are dropping the triathlon scene to jump over to the kickboxing scene. This is the first professional fighter we have featured on the Physical Performance Show. It's a whole lot of fun. Nathan's a real character. We'll take a lot out of his sharings, his learnings, the highs, the lows of his career to date. So until then, keep pursuing your physical best performance. I'm Brad Beer, and this has been the Physical Performance Show.